The biggest problem right now is it's almost as if the Chicago Teachers Union is running the city.
You're talking about the spending. And so with CTU in charge, they're never going to cut down on their own people. But you've crunched the numbers in ways that other people may never. What's the story with like the central office staff? Like, where is there room to make? No one wants to cut education, right? Especially if they're saying it's underfunded. But like, what's the truth?
I'm happy to say that that IPI, Illinois Policy Institute, has been covering this the better part of 4 or 5 years. Particularly since COVID, that they've been using the one-time COVID money that the federal government gave the schools $2.8 billion in federal COVID money. And they went out and they added 9,000 additional positions. Now, they were already a school system that had one employee for every 8.5 kids. Well, now they have one employee for every 7.3 kids. Think about this for a second. You have a school system that has one employee for every 7.3 kids, and they're complaining that they don't have librarians, okay? Or they don't have enough counseling, or they're cutting crossing guards, okay? So one employee for every 7.3 kids. 23,000 of those employees are not teachers. There are more non-teachers than there are teachers. Almost 8,000 of those employees are central office, regional office administrators, citywide service providers, etc. They're not even in the schools, or they're not permanently assigned to the schools. So how's that money being spent? And again, they added 9,000 additional positions. I think IPI points out not all those positions were filled, but I think their headcount is almost 7,000 above what it was in 2019, despite the fact that they lost 10% enrollment. So literally, they've been hiring more people and spending more money and increasing per pupil spending by 43% since 2019, since COVID hit, and they can't balance their budget. You wonder why they're in a financial crisis, and unfortunately, their financial crisis is dragging the city along, particularly now that the Chicago Teachers Union has one of their own running the city.
I think it's really hard for Chicagoans to see this, right? You love this city. You want kids to get a good education. You don't want to pay more taxes. It's got to hurt if you're a taxpayer and you see your property taxes going up and you're not able to send your kid to selective enrollment schools and you're not getting them educated at, the public schools.
Well, we have to understand what's happening here is, first of all, taxes and fees are out of control, not only in the city of Chicago, but in the state. IPI has been very aggressive about pointing out that if you live in Illinois, you pay the highest state and local taxes in the country. In the country. Not, of all 50 states, you are paying the most. I think they pointed out that it's like, $13,000, $14,000 per family. And they're talking about the tax differential. If somebody moved to Indiana, they would pay about almost $6,000 less in taxes. The bottom line is we are the most taxed state. Yet, ironically, we rank 50th in equity. In the last 20 years, Chicago has seen the largest exodus of blacks of any city, including Detroit. Well over 250,000, overwhelmingly middle-income families with children. Huh. The adult population, the adult black population in Chicago over that period of time has declined 17%. The children, the population, the percentage of the drop in black children population, 47%. Why are they leaving? Crime, taxes, absence of quality schools, and people are not moving to Florida or Texas. Actually, the states that have been the recipients of the largest number of residents who have fled, there's Florida, Wisconsin, and Indiana. So they're just moving. Most of them are moving right across the border, and obviously Texas is a driving point. The problem with the schools is, it's not only we're spending so much money, and let me point out that Illinois spends between 19% to 64% more per pupil than surrounding states. So we are spending more than our neighbors. It's not only that we're spending a lot of money, but at the same time, we're not allowing the schools to use that money in ways that can improve student achievement, because the collective bargaining contracts limit your ability to really restructure schools, to make changes in schools, to improve student achievement.
I guess I'm curious because for someone who is looking at this and envisioning, what could local school councils be doing? How would they choose to change? Like, if you could just wave a magic wand, how could things be different where you have more money flowing into the students? Like, what would that even look like? How would it take shape?
I'll tell you what we did in 1995, going back before you were born, by the way.
And
before your producer was born. And yes, I was bald then too. But anyway, the long story short, in 1995, the school system was on the verge of collapse. So the Republicans, led by Jim Edgar, gave the mayor control over the schools. They consolidated the revenues that went to the schools, and they removed obstacles to making changes in schools, basically telling the union, you can strike on financial issues, but you can't strike on issues involving education models, raising standards, and things like that. So what happened was we not only balanced the budget, but 6 years later, the school district had almost 40,000 more students. It had lost 115,000 students the previous 15 years. For a 7-year period, enrollment soared, and the schools were left with cash balances of almost $1 billion. Now, what do? We did some very simple things. The first thing we did was we gutted the central administration and central office. In other words, we really did school-based budgeting, where we built our budgets around the schools. The idea here was to maximize the amount of money flowing to the schools so that the schools would, the schools would be the primary recipient. So
books, library.
Exactly. And to give them discretion, not only on how to spend their overall budgets, but to give them complete discretion on their spending of Title I money, poverty money. And there were high schools that got well over $1 million in Title I money. So they were able to get that extra librarian or extra staff or extra counselor. The second thing we did was we really empowered and supported the councils. Now, I clashed with some of the councils because I was an accountability freak. You know what I mean? So if a council made a bad decision, I wouldn't hesitate. But I grew to appreciate this idea of local control. So you had elected local school councils and their principals had a lot of autonomy on how to spend that money most effectively. And then the third thing we did was to try to figure out a way to make the schools attractive by magnetizing the schools. Not only did we open a number of new magnet high schools, they always say college prep. Well, all the high schools, technically, are supposed to be college prep. But the point is, we opened 6 or 7 versions of Whitney Young's. But we put magnet programs in neighborhood schools like International Baccalaureate programs, World Language Academy programs. The whole idea was to put programs in neighborhood schools that made those schools attractive. So the bottom line is we gave people a reason. We gave people a reason to go to schools. We made those schools attractive. We gave those schools the autonomy to make changes at the local level. Right now, it's like the unions are there. They not only oppose charters, they oppose funding for private schools, they oppose alternative schools. They're even trying to undermine the magnet schools because the magnet schools are an embarrassment to them because the magnet schools outperform the neighborhood schools and they offer an embarrassing contrast. So they want to have these very rigid, union-dominated neighborhood schools with very limited autonomy and flexibility. But of course, those schools are struggling and many of them are failing.